Okay, jumping over to one of the highest over-unders on the slate this week, we had the Ravens versus the Texans. Now, this one is in Houston, but I would be remiss to not mention the last time these guys played. I believe the final score was like 41-6, 41-7. Ravens absolutely crushing the Texans. That one was in Baltimore, but that was also at the point in time when the Texans had DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm worried about this one. This one doesn't make sense to me in terms of the over-under. So they're giving this a 50-point over-under, second highest on the week, only behind the Falcons and Cowboys game. The implied point total right now is 28.5 for the Ravens, 21.5 for the Texans, with the Ravens getting a -7 point spread. Obviously, the Ravens dominated on defense last week playing against the Browns, and we saw the Browns come out and have a much better offensive showing tonight. So we'll see whether that speaks more to the Ravens just having a really good defense again, or if it was just a sputtering start for the Browns. But we know that the Ravens have a very strong set of players on defense. They were very cohesive last year, very strong in that regard, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were so again against the Texans. Now, the Texans looked a little bit disjointed on offense last week against the Chiefs. They had a couple nice drives and put together some garbage time points for you, but for the most part, they played really sloppily against the Chiefs last week. Deshaun Watson was not going deep very much at all. Will Fuller was pretty much the only guy that he ended up targeting towards the end of the game. David Johnson looked decent, had some nice runs against the Chiefs, but once they started getting routed, they had to abandon the run and go to the pass game. I'm concerned for the Texans' prospects whenever they have these kind of games, because if they go down really quickly, I don't know that they have the firepower to actually be able to hang with the Ravens. So in terms of this over-under, I'm a little bit skittish about what it actually means for the Texans. I'm surprised that spread is only 7 for the Ravens. I think there's a little bit of carryover and bleed over from what we expect the Texans to be based on previous seasons, and I just don't believe that anymore. So in terms of who we're starting this week, the Ravens are easy. You're starting Lamar, you're starting Marquise, you're starting Mark Andrews, and you're starting the Ravens defense. Even if this is a high-scoring game, the Ravens defense should get plenty of sacks, plenty of opportunities for interceptions. Deshaun Watson is always good for one or two of those, and hopefully you get one of those run back for a pick six. Now, the biggest question mark here is, what do you do with that run game? Mark Ingram had more carries than J.K. Dobbins last week, but J.K. Dobbins was actually on the field for more snaps than Mark Ingram. Obviously, he was the one that came away with the 2 touchdowns, involved more in the passing game, and Mark Ingram wasn't really involved in the passing game all that much last year. He did have a lot of passing touchdowns, but it wasn't like he had a high market share of targets for this team. So this is a very concerning situation if you drafted Mark Ingram early. I'm a bit worried about what this actually means for his prospects going forward. I've been a huge fan of J.K. Dobbins ever since the Ravens drafted him, and I feel like he is eventually going to be able to take over a pretty big workload here, but Greg Roman has basically been telling us that the usage split for these running backs is going to change every week. He keeps saying it over and over again, and I don't think that we should assume that he's lying to us because we came out and were surprised week 1. Don't be surprised if the same thing happens in week 2. So am I completely pivoting off of these guys? No. I mean, there's plenty of better or worse plays that I would play Ingram or Dobbins over. I think Dobbins probably carries a little bit more upside, but if I had to choose between one or the two, I'd probably go with Ingram one more time until we see that they're going to be using Dobbins like this every single week. Because again, with the way that they're talking, it's going to change every week. I think Ingram could definitely have a good game this week, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. I know a lot of people would be at this point, but personally, if you have both of these guys or if you have one or the other, I would try to find a better matchup play here and just wait this situation out until it becomes a little more clear, whether that is due to someone getting traded away or someone suffering an injury and they're not as viable in the offense anymore. Until we have a little bit more clarity here, this is going to be a really annoying situation to figure out, akin to the Patriots have passed. So I would try to avoid them if at all possible. And then Boykin and Snead definitely are decent GPP plays in DraftKings, but not someone I'm throwing into my lineup in a season-long league. So on the Texans side, of course you're going to start David Johnson. He looked really good, and even if the Ravens rout the Texans, I think he'll be involved enough in the passing game that he'll still have a pretty decent baseline there. And then Will Fuller, I mean, there's no way you can bench him after the amount of targets and receptions he had last week against the Chiefs. So I like both of those guys as strong plays this week. Now, where it gets interesting is Deshaun Watson. Last year when Deshaun Watson played the Ravens, he had like 165 passing yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and like 11 rushing yards. It was a terrible, like completely destroyed, lost you your week kind of game from Deshaun Watson. He is prone to do that. Like if you look back, he buoys a lot of his fantasy points on the year with some big blow-up games, and he has a few of these absolute stinkers where, unless he comes back and gets you some garbage time, it's a really bad week. And I'm afraid that could potentially happen again this week. So while I still think the upside is there for Watson, especially with this higher over-under, if you have another option that you're comfortable with starting, I would potentially throw Deshaun Watson on my bench in this one. Yes, we have seen them come out and play well in tough games like they did against the Patriots last year, and the fact that they're in Houston might change things a little bit. So I'm not telling you absolutely have to bench Deshaun Watson. I'm just giving you the potential warning signs here, the red flags that I'm seeing playing the Ravens. I would be a little bit hesitant to throw Watson into my starting lineup. And then all the ancillary pieces, Duke Johnson, Brandin Cooks, Randall Cobb, Kenny Stills, Darren Fells, Jordan Akins, like all these guys, I'm very nervous about the touch distribution. The only people that we saw last week that had any semblance of decent usage was David Johnson and Will Fuller. I'm not going to be risking throwing any of those other guys in my lineup until we see trends. So at this point, if you own any of these guys, we're just waiting and trying to see what the trend is. But in terms of my projection for this one, I have the Ravens blowing the Texans out 35-16. Might still get some decent garbage time there, but that's kind of leading into my hesitancy to start Deshaun Watson here.